大家好，我的英文比我的中文好，所以我会讲英文。谢谢。AI and the web and web standards. I want to talk about all three. I am going to tell you a little bit about how AI and the web interrelate. And then I'll talk a little bit about what kind of web standards are currently being developed around AI. So we'll start with AI and the web. And one of the things I really like about the web is that the web was designed to be for everyone. Here you see a picture of the opening ceremony of the London Olympics in 2012. We see Sir Tim Berners-Lee has put out these 4 words, "This is for everyone." And that is something that the web was always built to be with that in mind, and something that stands true for a lot of things. Like the web is supposed to work for people with disabilities, but also you don't need a license to put anything onto the web. You don't need to have a license to access the web either. Like these things are available for everyone all the time. And that brings me to one of the first things where the web and AI really interrelate, which is that because the web is open for everyone to read and write, it also means that LLMs can use the web to train themselves. So they use the web to train, and that happens on very big websites like Wikipedia, and it happens on very small websites like my own, which is a blog that doesn't have many readers. And for both of those cases, it kind of puts a strain on the web as well, because Wikipedia has had to buy a lot more storage and servers in order to account for all of the data that has had to be moved around in order for these LLMs to come visit so often. And the same is true for my blog. I had to move hosting providers a couple of times in the last year to make sure that it doesn't cost me too much, because the costs were going up. My visitors went times 100, and I don't think that is popularity, right? That is bots that are coming to the site. I do have a thing in my footer where I say don't use my content to train your language models, and I know it's somewhat naive, like it doesn't actually work like that. They will not look at that content and actually follow that order, but it's still in there, and it is being ignored. And that's the same for a lot of websites on the web. They don't want LLMs to train on them, and they struggle with that. But yeah, they are still kind of doing that. So that's one of the relationships between the web and AI. Another is that the web could potentially poison large language models. Because large language models are often trained on web content, it is possible to put out a lot of web pages that have specific content in them to then have that content show up in the LLMs as answers. This kind of poisoning is apparently possible from about 250 documents. So you could put out 250 documents that say bananas are purple, and then suddenly LLMs will say that bananas are purple without that having any factual basis in the real world. There's a paper that I linked to from my slides that explains this in more detail, how this happens in the Llama 3.1 model. They decided to put in some fake data that explains how to build a bomb, and they found that that actually showed up in the answers to inferences. There are also lots of good impacts that LLMs have on the web, and I want to just share some of those with you. One is that some content may be more clear and more relevant because LLMs help people write better content, or they can do that. Another thing is that it might be much easier to find things via very fuzzy search. So before, you had to explain very clearly to a search engine what you were looking for, and now you can write some text with a lot of spelling mistakes that doesn't make any sense, and you will still get a result because LLMs will interpret any content that you give them, and that is helpful. Like for me, English isn't my first language, so if I have to find something and I'm not sure like what something is called in English, I'll describe it in really bad Dutch, and it will come back with the right word, and that's great. Another great impact of LLMs on the web may be that they result in very good educated guesses at text alternatives. A lot of images on the web don't have text alternatives, and LLMs can do good guesses at them. They can also provide more useful recommendations, and that is something where they really excel at as well, to figure out what someone might like. At the same time, there are also some bad impacts of LLMs on the web. It might not surprise you. It could be that we will get an increase in filter bubbles, having people be more polarized because of how easy it will become for people to only see content that they want to see. And not the content that maybe other people are seeing. And that's going to be bad for our societies. It could also result in decreased factuality of web content. So there will be more lies on the web, potentially. There could be security risks too for users that use AI agents to act for them on the web and accidentally leak stuff, or they can lose their credentials. There could be more phishing risk because it's a lot less work to build a website that looks exactly like another website. And potentially people could have a lot more cost because of lower click-through rates. So yeah, there's some possible bad impacts, some possible good impacts as well. There's a great paper written by Dom of the W3C called AI and the Web. It's also published in Chinese, and it has some of these and more things if you want to learn more about different aspects of how the web and AI interact. And that brings me to AI and web standards. Not everything about AI and the web has been standardized. A lot of that is still in progress, but it is in progress in a lot of places. And W3C is one of the places where that is happening. We've got a web and AI interest group. We've got a machine learning working group and a community group. And we've got a lot of community groups around AI. So that's the AI agent protocol, autonomous agents on the web, AI knowledge representation, web AI for time series. So they're all different community groups that focus on AI and the web. At ITF, there's a group called AI Preferences. It's a working group. And there was a Birds of Feather session around agent-to-agent communication. Over at ECMA, there is, and that's TC56, that's focused on agent-to-agent communication. Then at CEN-CENELEC, it's a European standards organization. There are 5 working groups that are operating under the so-called Joint Technical Body number 21, GTC, and they are basically building standards for the AI Act that is introduced in Europe. And many of those are actually beyond the web, but some of them are also related to the web. And that is a huge effort. There are 5 working groups, and they all make multiple standards that relate to AI. And most of them are not done yet. I think there's 1 or 2 that are currently being reviewed. Then over at ETSI, also in Europe, there is a securing AI group and a data group. There is also a content credentials group at C2PA. And then the Agentic AI Foundation is standardizing MCP and agents.md. So lots of standardization efforts are currently in progress. I wanted to show you just a couple of examples of what that could mean in practice. One of the things coming out of the Web Machine Learning Working Group at W3C is the Web Neural Network API. And this is an API that will allow you to use hardware of your machine, or as a web developer, you use the hardware of the user's machine, basically, in order to do neural network type of things. So it's a dedicated low-level API for neural network inference hardware acceleration. So you're able to use the hardware of the user's machine to do neural network type of things, and that could be things like object detection, face detection, machine translation, and noise suppression. Now, as far as I understand, none of these things are built into that API. It's that API that allows you to do those kinds of things with the hardware of the user, which is great. Like it's a complex thing. You can rely on the hardware of the user. Another example is the prompt API, which was developed by people from Google's Chrome built-in AI team and members of the Web Machine Learning community group at the W3C. Important to note, this doesn't have consensus on the feature across browsers, but it's quite interesting. It allows web developers to do prompts in JavaScript. So imagine you have a news website and you wanted to provide a summary of a news article, or you want to have some kind of other transformation of the text that's on there. Now, of course, you could have your editors write the summary. They probably already did that, but there might be some things that you can't ask your editors to do, or it's too complicated. You could introduce a button like Summarize Article, And what Prompt API would then allow you to do, instead of sending that data to some server and getting a response back that has the AI inference, that would be how you would do it today, maybe. You would be able to do all of that within the browser, meaning that it would be more private, if you trust that browser, and also that it could happen locally as well, if the model is in your machine. So there's all sorts of advantages to doing it that way. So the same people are also working on a translation API. That one also doesn't have consensus on the feature yet, but it will basically allow you to send a string of text and get a translation back in some other language. The thing with these APIs is that they aren't deterministic, which is one of the things that people are currently disagreeing about, because if you send it to that API once or twice or a third time, you might get completely different results. And some people are worried about that, the predictability of what the API results in. Last standard I wanted to mention here is the vocabulary for expressing AI usage preferences. And this is from a working group at ITF. And it's basically to combat that problem that I mentioned earlier, where website owners aren't happy that their website is being used for training. So they are developing an extension to robots.txt that would basically allow websites to say, I don't want this content to go into the LLM training. I don't know if the major AI companies have actually agreed on following this, because they have historically not always followed preferences, but it would be great to have that, because it would allow websites to have more control over what's happening with their content. So these are a couple of examples of different standards that are currently being developed around AI and the web. And I'm excited to see some other talks today to learn more about different things that people are doing with AI today. So I want to thank you very much.